This is Evan Robb, and I am joined today with Laura Robb. We are talking about change, and today we are talking about disrupting reading instruction. Laura, welcome.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Evan, and it's one of my favorite topics.
And may I ask why it's one of your favorite topics?
Well, as I go around the country, I still see many schools using a one-size-fits-all approach. And that could be everybody in the same novel, or it could be everybody in the same basal program, which is written for grade level readers, or everybody on a computer program for grade level readers. And the reality of classrooms all over the country is that everybody isn't on grade level.
I would say it's an interesting presumption to assume that every student that enters, and I'll just say here, let's say a 7th grade language arts class, is on the exact same reading level and therefore could read the same book at the same pace and learn from the book just as everyone else.
Right, and I think, part of the problem is training teachers to do a different kind of instruction so that students are reading at their instructional level and they have choice. And it really works, except you can throw a basal at a teacher, you can throw one novel with packets of worksheets that the kids do, but what's happening in the country is we have a large majority of children who are continually being left behind because they're not reading. So when you don't read in English language arts because you can't read the book, and then you're not reading in science and social studies and math, you're going backwards all the time. And we have kids who start out and with some support and help could really become good readers. And I've seen that because, as you know, I'm still teaching and I'm working with that population that somehow has not learned to break the code and decode words and be able to read with some fluency.
I appreciate what you're saying because, what I'm hearing is that in some classrooms, in some places where it's one novel for everyone, students who cannot read the novel might find ways to fly low under the radar and just kind of work through whatever assignments are with the novel, but they're not reading. And what I'm hearing you say is common sense, but I think it's very important, which is if you want to get better at reading, you need to read.
You have to read. So the accommodations that teachers make are they all have a book on tape, so the kids are listening, or the teacher reads it aloud and everybody is following. But in reality, if you are reading 3, 4, 5 years below your instructional grade level, you're not following because you can't follow. Not only that, that's a very passive way of learning. So after 5 minutes or 7 minutes of, quote, following, there is no following at all. The students learn very easily how long they have to look at that page and then, turn as the teacher is reading. So, and they're watching other students turn the page, and it becomes a game instead of reading instruction.
I can recall when I was in middle school, I can recall being in a language arts classroom where the teacher would read the book, and it was entertaining. But I do not recall doing a lot of reading when I was in that language arts classroom.
The bottom line is that if you want to get better in reading, it's the same as a sport. You want to get better at basketball, soccer, football, you got to practice. The same thing in reading. You want to get better at reading, you got to practice.
So you've helped me and people who are watching really understand some of the more traditional ways that reading takes place in language arts classrooms. Can you paint a picture now of how it should look? And I know you've talked to me before about 3 types of reading that should occur in a language arts classroom, particularly upper elementary through middle school. Can you share some of those ideas?
Yes, I absolutely can. One of the reasons that teachers favor having everybody in the same book or everybody in the same program is that they have a common text and they can teach how to respond to literature, how to write in their notebooks. So I've developed a 3-part model where the instructional piece is a common text that I call an anchor text. It could be a picture book or an excerpt from a book, but it takes about 2 weeks to move through it because you read short selections every day and the teacher thinks aloud. So if you're really focusing on making inferences, the teacher will read a section aloud and model how he or she makes inferences, and then turns the process over to students after 2 or 3 lessons because it's interactive. The kids have to participate if they're going to get anything out of it. And if the teacher has an opportunity to observe, can they make an inference after they talk to a partner? So that's the first piece. And it takes about 10 to 12 minutes off a reading class. The second piece is instructional reading that happens at school. And that's where the issue develops. So I have come to organize reading around a genre, like maybe everybody's reading biography or realistic fiction or mystery or fantasy. And if you're in the same genre, I can have kids in 5th grade reading fantasy at a 2nd grade instructional level, at 3rd, at 4th, at 5th, at 6th, and above, even further. But they all have something they can talk about to a partner. And the way I organize partnerships is that they're no more than a year apart, so they have something to give to each other. So in class, the kids read, then they talk to their partner using the model that the teacher presented. So for me, it's a very easy way of thinking about instruction. What you model is what students practice, is what you assess. So when you plan a unit, it might be that you're going to model making inferences. You might, if it's informational text, focus on text structure. And the kids practice with their instructional book. The last piece is independent reading. And if students don't do independent reading, they will make minimal progress. Scheduling independent reading has been very difficult for teachers. And this year, the teachers I worked with, together, we solved the problem. And we start every 60-minute block of language arts off with 15 minutes of sustained silent reading of self-selected books. We teach children how to choose an independent book because their independent reading is usually 1 or 2 years below instructional reading. It should be fun and easy and fluent. But if a child really wants to try a challenging book and is willing to read it again and again until they really get it, I'm all for that.
Well, Laura, that's very, very interesting. So you're sharing a 3-part model of anchor text, and instructional reading, where you're incorporating a lot of reading strategies. And I appreciate you sharing the value and the importance of independent reading. And it's okay for independent reading to occur in school also.
That's extremely important because a lot of students won't do it at home, and the families they never had independent reading and they never saw how important it was. So what is important is that the kids learn that the teacher and the school values independent reading, and they begin to develop stamina, that ability to focus and concentrate for a period of time so that they will choose to do that at home.
Laura, I appreciate you sharing that. You shared a lot of information in our conversation today, and I appreciate your time for enlightening me and everyone who's watching about effective reading instruction in schools today. And thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Appreciate your time, Laura. Thanks.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure, Evan.